So I've observed an interesting specimen of human behavior. What we have here is a woman who married into a family, acquired a 6-year-old stepson in the package deal, and then apparently forgot that children are, in fact, human beings deserving of basic decency. Let's examine this case study together. Our observer today is a 33-year-old woman who's been watching her younger sister Michala, 30 years old and married to a man named Brad for 3 years now, engage in what I can only describe as a masterclass in how not to blend a family. When Michala married Brad, he came with a son, Jimmy, 6 years old at the time. His biological mother hasn't been in the picture since he was a baby, so this kid's only real maternal figure is, well, Michala. Notice the pattern here. The entire family welcomed Jimmy with open arms, treated him like one of their own. Everyone, that is, except the one person whose acceptance actually mattered. Michala never warmed up to the boy. Our observer notes that Michala has never been one to warm up to kids, and once they develop the audacity to talk back, a standard developmental milestone, I might add, she loses it entirely. And here's where the behavior becomes particularly fascinating. Our observer has personally witnessed multiple instances of Michala and Brad being cruel to Jimmy. Not physical abuse, she clarifies, but verbal. The emotional kind that leaves different scars. The kind that makes a kid wonder why the adults who are supposed to love him treat him like an inconvenience. Then Michala had her own biological child, Sam, now 2 years old, and the treatment of Jimmy got worse. Fascinating specimen of favoritism in its natural habitat. Cut to yesterday. Our observer receives a phone call from Michala, who is, quote, very upset. Why? Because Jimmy's school contacted Child Protective Services. The 9-year-old boy made a statement at school about how he's being treated at home, and it triggered a mandatory CPS call. Now, a reasonable parent receiving this news might experience a moment of self-reflection, perhaps some concern for their child's emotional state, maybe a gentle conversation about what prompted such a serious disclosure. Michala's response, cussing out Jimmy, who was in the back seat of the car during this phone call, by the way, and threatening to ship him off to his biological mother on the next plane. The audacity here is genuinely impressive. Your stepson just told mandatory reporters at his school that he's being mistreated at home, and your immediate reaction is to verbally abuse him in real time while on the phone with a witness. The self-awareness is simply not present. Our observer, listening to this unfold, finally manages to get a word in. She offers a solution. She'll take Jimmy in, put him in school near where she lives, suggests the family get therapy because clearly they need it, and here we see the classic defensive pattern emerge. Michala immediately turns on her sister, accuses her of calling her a bad parent, which, the observer notes with beautiful restraint, if the shoe fits. Michala then claims her sister is trying to upshine her, and launches into a rant about what a pain in the ass Jimmy can be. Notice the complete inability to accept responsibility. The instant deflection. It's textbook. Now let's examine the reality of Jimmy's behavior. He has ADHD. He requires patience and understanding, things that are apparently in short supply at home. Our observer has AITA herself, so she knows what works. And when Jimmy stays with her, he's mostly just a rambunctious boy who hero worships his older cousin, her 17-year-old son. Not exactly the demon child Michala describes, just a neurodivergent kid who needs adults who don't treat him like a burden. So our observer does what any rational person watching a child suffer would do. The next morning, she calls the regional CPS office, speaks to a caseworker, explains who she is and that she knows Jimmy gave a statement. Then she does something remarkable. She tells the truth. She describes what she's personally witnessed of Michala and Brad's treatment of Jimmy, provides context about his personality, his ADHD, whether he has a tendency to lie, basically gives CPS a complete picture of who this child actually is. And then she volunteers for kinship placement for both Jimmy and his 2-year-old half-brother Sam, should the situation warrant it. And now she's wondering if she's the asshole. Let me walk through this logic puzzle. A child is being verbally abused by his stepmother and father. The child is suffering enough to report it at school. CPS is now involved. The observer has personally witnessed this mistreatment. She has the means, the willingness, and the understanding to provide a safe home for this child. And she's asking if offering that safe home makes her an asshole. The cognitive dissonance in family dynamics never ceases to amaze me. There's this fascinating social pressure that emerges in situations like this. The idea that keeping the family together, maintaining the appearance of unity, is somehow more important than protecting a child from emotional harm. That intervening makes you a troublemaker, a meddler, someone who's calling people bad parents rather than someone who's trying to prevent a kid from being damaged. But here's the thing about children and trauma. They don't care about family politics. They don't care if Aunt so-and-so thinks you should have minded your business. They care that they're being treated like they're worthless and nobody's stopping it. Jimmy is 9 years old. He's been dealing with this treatment since he was 6, his entire childhood with Michala. He's watching his stepmother dote on his half-brother while treating him like an inconvenience. He's being verbally abused by both his father and stepmother. He was brave enough to speak up at school, and his reward was being screamed at in the car. And the pattern continues, predictable as clockwork. Our observer also raises an interesting point. She volunteered to take in Sam, too, the 2-year-old biological child, because she recognizes that if the home environment is toxic enough to harm Jimmy, Sam isn't going to escape unscathed either. Different treatment, perhaps, but dysfunction doesn't discriminate in the long run. Michala's accusation that her sister is trying to upshine her is particularly revealing. It suggests that Michala views parenting as a competition, a performance. The idea that her sister might provide better care for Jimmy isn't processed as this would be better for Jimmy. It's processed as this makes me look bad. Which, it does, but that's not the sister's fault. That's just observable reality. The truth is, our observer didn't make Michala look like a bad parent. Michala accomplished that entirely on her own by being a bad parent. The CPS call didn't happen because Jimmy's aunt interfered. It happened because Jimmy was suffering enough to ask for help. The investigation isn't occurring because the family is being attacked. It's occurring because a child reported abuse. And naturally, when confronted with the consequences of their own behavior, Michala and Brad will likely blame everyone but themselves. The school for overreacting, Jimmy for lying or being dramatic, the aunt for betraying the family. Anyone and everyone except the 2 adults who created this situation by treating a child like garbage. The specimen's response was entirely predictable. Here's what makes this case particularly fascinating from a behavioral standpoint. Our observer is offering Michala an out, a way to de-escalate the situation, get the support and therapy the family needs, and ensure Jimmy is cared for during that process. She's not trying to permanently take Jimmy away or destroy the family. She's trying to provide a safe landing pad while the adults get their act together. But Michala can't see that. All she can see is criticism, judgment, competition. Her defensive walls are so high that she can't recognize help when it's being offered. Observe as the ego protection mechanism overrides all rational thought. So to answer the question, no, our observer is not the asshole, not even close. She's doing what any decent human being should do when they witness a child being mistreated. She's speaking up and offering a solution. The fact that this even feels like a questionable action speaks to how normalized family dysfunction has become, how we've been conditioned to prioritize adult feelings over child safety. Jimmy deserves adults who treat him with kindness, who have patience for his ADHD, who see him as a person worthy of love and respect, not as a burden or a mistake. If his stepmother and father can't provide that, and all evidence suggests they can't, then having him live with an aunt who actually cares about his well-being isn't cruel. It's common sense. And that, dear audience, is what happens when humans forget that children aren't accessories to their lives. They are entire people with needs and feelings and the unfortunate ability to remember exactly how you treated them. Nature's way of maintaining balance. Consequences. A textbook case of priorities misplaced and empathy absent. Predictable, as always. So what do you think? Should family loyalty override a child's safety? Or is protecting a kid from emotional abuse always the right move, even when it fractures family relationships? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've witnessed similar family dynamics, where speaking up made you the villain, I'd love to hear how you handled it. If you enjoyed this examination of human behavior at its most frustrating, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that make you question how some people are allowed to raise children. Until next time, I'll be here, observing the fascinating disaster that is human decision-making. Title suggestions primary, I offered to take in my nephew after he reported abuse. Now my sister hates me alt 1. My sister treats her stepson like garbage, so I called CPS and offered him a home alt 2. If his mom wants him, he's gone. Sister rages after stepson reports mistreatment alt 3. I volunteered for CPS placement after watching my sister abuse her stepson. AITA.